I'm Beau Johnson. It's December 22nd, 2025. Welcome to yes2hellwith.com. Be sure to visit jamesbowersjohnson.com and get the report that's available for $1. This offer will last for one more week only. A Yes to Hell With subscriber recently sent me an observation about what are often called exotic legal concepts. He was thoughtful and sincere. He explained that while he knows his understanding is limited, he has been studying ideas such as trusts and the claim that the financial crises in the 1800s placed this nation under a form of bankruptcy, and the theory that British trust principles and maritime concepts replaced natural law. He pointed to language like liquid assets, currency, and maritime references to birth and docking, capitalization of names, and the idea of a legal fiction imposed without knowledge or consent. His conclusion was that a long-running deception exists, sustained by presumed jurisdiction and presumed authority. And he felt this aligned with what I've been explaining about presumption. That observation deserves to be addressed carefully, not because the intuition is incorrect, but because whether those historical conclusions are correct or not is secondary. It is secondary to the problem that most Americans actually face in real life, in real courtrooms, with real consequences. Before any discussion of hidden mechanisms, symbolic language, or historic theories, the first thing that must be understood is this: the modern legal system operates almost entirely by presumption. Courts, agencies, and enforcement bodies do not begin by proving jurisdiction, authority, or applicability. They proceed as if those things already exist. They proceed as if the court has authority over the person, as if the statute applies, as if the agency has the power it claims, as if the duty is already established. That is not because government officials possess secret knowledge or consciously impose obscure doctrines. It is because the system is built to move forward unless someone knows how to stop it. Presumption is the fuel. Silence is treated as compliance, and compliance is mistaken for consent. And once the machinery starts rolling, it doesn't stop to educate. It doesn't slow down because of confusion. It doesn't pause because people weren't trained in this realm. Now picture who actually runs the system day to day. A police officer, a zoning official, a clerk, a prosecutor, an IRS agent, an FBI agent, even a judge. These people are not enforcing ancient trusts or maritime law. They are enforcing procedure. They are enforcing a standardized administrative process that is hard-lined, efficient, and ruthlessly aligned with the system itself. Even judges, who are lawyers, are trained primarily in administration, precedent, and case flow. They are not philosophers of jurisdiction. Their role, as the system now functions, is to keep the machinery moving. And when the machinery moves, it almost always sides with itself. That matters because it exposes a key truth. The system does not require exotic explanations to function. Presumption alone is sufficient. It will presume the court has jurisdiction. It will presume you are the person it alleges. It will presume liability. It will presume duty. It will presume the government actor has authority. And unless you know how to challenge those presumptions in the correct procedural posture, the presumptions harden into findings, and the findings harden into judgments. Now place an ordinary person into that system, someone responding to a zoning citation, a fine, a traffic ticket, a tax notice, or a regulatory demand. That person usually has no understanding of jurisdiction, no distinction between subject matter jurisdiction and personal jurisdiction, no sense of burden shifting, no awareness of how presumptions are created or sustained. And because they don't know what matters, they often gravitate toward what sounds powerful Big theories, hidden theories, symbolic interpretations, concepts that promise a master key. But here's the problem. Expecting the average American to successfully argue admiralty law, maritime jurisdiction, centuries-old trust acts, or complex financial constructs is not just unrealistic, it is self-defeating. The officials they face do not recognize those frameworks. The courts do not operate on them, and the person invoking them cannot enforce them procedurally. You don't win by sounding sophisticated. You win by hitting the system at the points where it is legally required to prove itself, if challenged correctly. That is why a real example I mentioned last week matters. A gentleman faced a jury trial for driving without a license. He was not prepared for a jury trial, and he was not prepared for driving without a license. He acted on a limited understanding of who he is and chose to drive without the identification that the system expects. He had no endgame. He did not understand himself in the context in which the system would encounter him and hold him accountable. And with less than 48 hours before a jury trial, he faced confusion, fear, and uncertainty. The result was predictable. He paid over $700 in fines and walked away in the same position, still inside the system, still bound by its presumptions, and still without a way to move forward, and still driving without a driver's license. No endgame. This is what happens when you meet a presumption-based machine without the tools to rebut presumptions. The machine will not reward sincerity. It will not credit good intent. It will not honor principle just because you feel it. It will compel performance. So the question must be asked plainly. Was this man realistically expected to argue hidden trust, centuries-old statutes, or complex financial arrangements to defend himself? Was he supposed to debate esoteric concepts with a judge who neither recognizes nor applies them? Or would he be better served by understanding the basic concepts that actually govern the encounter: jurisdiction, standing, burden of proof, and presumption? In this way, he could meet the system where reality meets, the man who is presumed guilty at the outset. This is where the Liberty Dialogues draw a firm line. The problem is not that Americans failed to uncover some hidden historical conspiracy. The problem is that they walk into a presumption-based system without understanding how presumption works. Jurisdiction is assumed unless challenged. Authority is treated as settled unless questioned. Procedure substitutes for proof. This is the real mechanism of control, and it operates in plain sight every day. Now let me be clear and fair to the subscriber who raised the exotic theories. If there is any valid mechanism behind the scenes, historical, financial, or legal, it can and should be discovered, tested, and employed in proper context. But context matters. No advanced theory, however intriguing, can be effective unless the basics of jurisdiction are first understood. Without that foundation, even a correct insight becomes unstable. The hard truth is this: jurisdiction today is not enforced through hidden doctrines or symbolic wordplay. It is enforced procedurally. Authority is presumed unless challenged. Applicability is assumed unless questioned. Consent is inferred from silence and compliance. That is the operating reality of the system people actually face. Until someone understands how jurisdiction is asserted, how burdens shift, and how presumption hardens into authority, they are not in a position to deploy more advanced arguments, no matter how sincere or well-researched those arguments may be. The Liberty Dialogues do not reject deeper inquiry. It insists on order. First, understand how the system functions in practice. Learn how jurisdiction is created, maintained, and rebutted on the record. Only then can more complex theories be evaluated intelligently and separated from speculation, and, if valid, used strategically rather than self-destructively. Skipping that foundation does not expose deception. It leaves people defenseless inside of it. That is the point, not to shut down inquiry, but to insist that the average American must first gain the kind of knowledge that actually changes outcomes, because the system is not waiting, and it is not gentle. It is presumptive, it is efficient, and it will keep moving until we learn how to disprove what it claims. And as always, may truth reign supreme.